The battlefield was burning, the air was thick with smoke, fire, and dust, metal beams had fallen, the ground was broken with craters, and the sky glowed red from distant explosions. The war between humans and aliens had already left this place in ruins, but still the sound of weapons echoed far away. A lone alien girl stumbled through the broken land. She was young, small compared to the armored warriors of her people, but her eyes burned with fierce light, her armor was cracked, her blade was broken, and her breathing was heavy. She had been fighting for hours, maybe days. It was hard to know anymore. Her comrades had fallen one by one until she was the only one left. Her legs shook, but she refused to fall. From the shadows of a collapsed wall, a human soldier watched. He had been separated from his own squad. He had no reason to step forward, no reason to risk his life for an alien who only hours ago was considered the enemy, but something inside him stirred as he saw her, fighting alone. Refusing to give up even when she had nothing left, he whispered to himself, "She's still fighting, why?" The alien girl swung her broken blade at the enemies who circled her. She was outnumbered 3-1, and her arms trembled with weakness. Blood dripped from her shoulder where she had been cut, yet she snarled like a cornered beast. The human clenched his fists, his heart pounding. He knew if he stayed hidden, she would fall in seconds. He also knew if he joined, the enemies would turn on him too. Still, he could not watch her die. With sudden resolve, he stepped out from behind the rubble. The alien girl's eyes widened when she saw the human approaching. For a heartbeat, she thought he had come to finish her, but then she noticed his weapon was not pointed at her. It was aimed at her enemies. The soldiers around her froze, surprised to see a human stepping in on the side of an alien. The battlefield grew silent for a moment. The human's voice was calm but strong. "You fought well," he said, "but you're not alone anymore." The girl blinked, her lips parted in shock. No one had ever spoken to her like that, not even among her own people. Something inside her chest stirred, a strange warmth in the middle of her pain. The enemies recovered from their shock and roared, charging at both of them. The human raised his rifle, firing quick bursts that cut two of them down before they reached. The alien girl, though weak, found sudden strength in her shaking arms and slashed at the third, her blade sparking against enemy armor. Together, they pushed back against the wave of attackers. For the first time, she wasn't alone, but the human could feel the pressure rising. More enemies were coming, their shadows appearing through the smoke. He gritted his teeth, pulling the girl beside him. "Stay close," he ordered. She wanted to protest, her pride screaming inside her, but her legs were too weak to stand without him. She obeyed, pressing her back to his. The ground shook with another explosion, dust and fire flying through the air. The human coughed but kept his stance. He fired again and again, pushing enemies away. The girl struck with every bit of strength left in her, and for a moment, they fought like one body. The enemies hesitated, confused, human and alien, standing together in the middle of war. The alien girl could barely breathe, her chest rising and falling like she had run 100 miles. Still, her eyes locked on the human. She saw no fear in him, only determination. For some reason, she felt her own fear fading away. The warmth in her chest grew stronger, though she tried to ignore it. Finally, the last of the small enemy squad fell, their bodies hitting the dust. The battlefield fell quiet again, broken only by the distant thunder of war far away. The alien girl staggered, her knees almost giving out. The human caught her arm, steadying her before she could collapse. Up close, she could see the lines of exhaustion on his face, but his grip was strong. Why help me?" she whispered, her voice shaking. The human looked at her, silent for a moment, then answered softly, "Because no one deserves to fight alone." Her throat tightened, and she looked away quickly, hiding her face behind her messy hair. She was not used to kindness, especially from a human. Before she could say more, the sound of marching feet echoed from the smoke again. Both of them turned their heads sharply. A larger force was approaching. The girl's eyes widened in fear, the human's jaw tightened. The first battle was over, but another was already coming, and this time, neither of them might survive. The rumble of heavy boots shook the ground. Through the wall of smoke, shadows moved, bigger, stronger, and more dangerous than before. The alien girl leaned against the human's arm, her chest heaving with shallow breaths. Her broken blade trembled in her weak grip. She whispered, almost in despair, "There are too many." The human didn't let go of her. He adjusted his rifle and gave her a quick look. "Then we fight smarter," he said firmly, something in his tone, calm, steady, almost stubborn, made her straighten her back. Even though her body screamed with pain, the enemies appeared in full view, armored soldiers with glowing visors and long spears, moving in perfect formation. They were not just raiders. These were elite hunters. The alien girl's heart sank. Her people had fallen to these warriors before, and she was certain she would fall now too, but the human stepped forward with no hesitation, his weapon raised. "Stay behind me," he said. Her pride burned at his words, but she also knew he was right. Still, she forced herself to move beside him instead of behind. If she was going to die, she would not die hiding. She would stand, even if her legs broke. The hunters roared and charged. The human fired first, his rifle flashing bright bursts that cut through the smoke. 2 soldiers fell instantly, their visors shattering. The others pushed forward, raising shields. The girl, finding strength she didn't know she had, darted forward with a sharp cry. Her broken blade clashed against a spear, sparks flying. Her arms shook, but her will was stronger. Back to back they fought, the human covering her blind side, the girl striking at the gaps in enemy armor. Though she was exhausted, his presence gave her fire she had never felt before. Every time she stumbled, his hand caught her. Every time he was surrounded, she struck from the side. It was not just battle, it was survival woven together. The enemies snarled, frustrated that 2 worn-out fighters could resist them. One hunter swung his heavy spear toward the girl's chest. She gasped, too slow to dodge, but the human lunged between them, blocking with his arm and firing point-blank into the hunter's visor. The alien girl froze, staring at him. He had taken the risk for her without thinking. Her heart hammered in her chest, not from fear this time, but from something she did not understand. They kept moving. The human barked quick orders. Left side, strike now. Step back. Duck. At first, she hated being commanded, but soon she realized his instructions kept her alive. Together, they tore through the formation, the battlefield turning into chaos. One by one, the hunters fell. The girl's hands were blistered, her body aching, but her spirit burned bright. She had not felt this alive in years. But the battle was not without cost. The human's shoulder was slashed, blood staining his armor. He gritted his teeth but refused to slow down. The girl saw it, and something twisted inside her chest. Worry, fear for him. She had never cared if her own people lived or died, but for him, she suddenly did. That thought scared her more than the enemies. After what felt like endless minutes, the last hunter dropped to the dirt. The battlefield fell silent again, broken only by their heavy breathing. The girl almost collapsed, but the human caught her, pulling her close to keep her on her feet. "You're still standing," he said, his lips curved in a faint smile. She stared at him, stunned. No one had ever said those words to her like they were proud. Her throat tightened, but she swallowed the feeling, hiding it behind a cold glare. "I don't need you," she muttered weakly, but her hand still clung to his arm, refusing to let go. The human didn't argue, he only gave a small nod. His calm eyes studied her, not with pity, but with respect, and that made her chest ache in a way she could not name. Suddenly, the ground shook again. From the distance came the sound of mechanical engines. The human turned sharply, pulling her with him toward the ruins. "More are coming," he said. The girl's legs nearly gave out. She had nothing left to fight with. Then. "Why don't you leave me?" she whispered, her voice cracking. The human looked at her with a firm gaze. "Because we're in this together now." Her heart skipped at those words. For a moment, the fire and smoke faded in her mind, replaced by something else, a strange hope. But before she could speak, a new squad of enemies broke through the smoke, larger and more dangerous than before. Both the human and the alien girl tightened their grip on their weapons. Standing shoulder to shoulder, they were battered, exhausted, and outnumbered. But for the first time, she did not feel alone. For the first time, she felt stronger, not weaker, because of someone beside her. The enemy roared, and the battle was about to begin again. Only this time, the girl was ready, and this time, she knew, whatever happened next, they would fight together. The smoke from the last battle drifted into the sky. The ground was littered with broken armor and burning machines. Silence fell for a short time, broken only by the sound of 2 survivors breathing hard. The human lowered his rifle, sweat dripping from his forehead. His chest rose and fell quickly, his body tired but still strong. Beside him, the alien girl tried to steady herself on shaking legs. Her blade, already cracked, slipped from her hand and clattered to the ground. She had no strength left, her body trembled, her wounds burned, and her vision blurred. She wanted to take another step, to keep standing tall, but her knees gave way beneath her. With a small gasp, she collapsed into the dust. The human turned instantly, dropping to one knee beside her. He slid his arm under her shoulders and lifted her carefully. Her head leaned against his chest, her eyes half closed. He whispered, "Stay with me." She wanted to protest, to tell him she was fine, but her voice refused to obey. All she could manage was a weak whisper, why are you still here?" The human glanced at the battlefield around them. "Because leaving you would mean everything we just fought for was nothing," he said firmly. The alien girl blinked slowly, her pride clashing with her heart. Her people had always taught her that humans were selfish, untrustworthy, and cruel, but this man, this stranger, carried her as though she mattered. Her chest tightened, not from pain this time, but from a strange warmth she had never felt. He lifted her into his arms fully, ignoring the blood that stained his own shoulder. Her small frame felt lighter than the gear he normally carried. Still, her trembling hand gripped his armor as though afraid he would let her fall. He held her closer, whispering, "I won't drop you." The battlefield was no longer safe. Far in the distance, new engines growled and heavy boots marched. If he stayed here, both of them would be caught and killed. The human scanned the ruins and spotted a collapsed bunker half buried in dust. Without wasting a moment, he carried her toward it, his boots crunching over broken stone. The bunker was dark, its walls cracked and its ceiling sagging, but it was shelter, and for now, that was enough. He laid the alien girl gently against the wall, her breathing shallow. Then he reached into his pack and pulled out a ration pack. He tore it open and pressed it into her hands. "Eat," he said simply. She frowned weakly, staring at the strange human food. Her pride told her to refuse, her instincts told her to trust nothing, but hunger gnawed at her belly. Slowly, she took a bite, her eyes never leaving his face. The taste was foreign, but it kept her alive. As she ate in silence, the human checked his weapon and reloaded. The faint light from a crack in the wall illuminated his profile. He looked tired, his jaw tight, but his eyes stayed sharp and alert. The girl found herself staring, wondering why a man who had every reason to abandon her stayed here instead. Finally, she spoke, her voice low. "My clan left me behind," she admitted, her throat tightening. "They said I was too weak to fight, too small to matter, so I fought alone, and now I see, maybe they were right." The human paused, then crouched in front of her. His voice was quiet but steady. "They were wrong." Her eyes widened slightly at his tone. "You stood against impossible odds," he continued, "and you didn't give up. That's not weakness, that's strength. If they can't see it, then they don't deserve you." Her chest tightened, her heart pounding in a strange way. No one had ever spoken to her like that, no one had ever defended her worth. She turned her face away quickly, hiding the shine in her eyes. "You don't know me," she whispered, but her trembling hands gripped the ration tighter, and deep inside, she wanted to believe his words. Suddenly, a sharp sound broke the fragile moment, the heavy sea runch of boots on gravel, echoing closer. The human froze, his hand tightening on his weapon. He moved silently to the wall and peered through a crack. Figures moved in the smoke outside, enemy scouts, searching the ruins. He turned back to the girl, pressing a finger to his lips. Her eyes widened, and she pulled herself weakly against the wall, trying to stay silent. The footsteps grew louder, closer. A shadow passed right by the bunker's entrance. The human raised his rifle slowly, steady hands waiting for the right moment. The girl's breath caught in her throat, her heart pounding so loud she feared the scouts might hear it. The shadow paused, listening. The silence stretched into unbearable tension. The girl's hand brushed against the human's armor, gripping it unconsciously. Her lips moved in a silent prayer to gods she no longer believed in. Finally, the shadow moved on, footsteps fading into the distance. The human lowered his rifle but stayed tense. "They'll be back," he muttered. The alien girl let out a shaky breath she didn't know she was holding. Her body was still weak, but now fear and exhaustion overwhelmed her even more. Her head tilted, her eyes closing against her will. Before slipping into unconsciousness, she whispered something soft. "Don't leave me." The human froze at those words. He looked down at her, her face pale but peaceful. He brushed a strand of messy hair from her forehead and murmured quietly, "I won't." Outside, the enemy still searched. Inside the bunker, a fragile bond had formed, and in the silence of the ruins, Two unlikely allies prepared for a fight that was far from over. The bunker was cold and silent, dust hung in the air, and the cracked walls smelled of smoke and old metal. The human sat against the wall, his rifle across his knees, his eyes fixed on the narrow entrance. Beside him, the alien girl lay still, her body paw. Lu, her breaths shallow. She had collapsed earlier, and though she was alive, every sound from outside threatened to end that fragile peace. The human's mind stayed sharp, scanning the shadows for danger, but even as he stayed alert, he kept glancing at her. Her face looked softer now, not like the fierce warrior she had been in battle, but like someone fragile, someone who had carried too much weight alone. Her small hand twitched, as if reaching for something even in her sleep. He frowned slightly and whispered under his breath, "You're tougher than you know." Hours passed in silence, broken only by distant explosions. Finally, she stirred, her eyes fluttering open slowly. For a moment, confusion clouded her gaze. When she realized she was resting against the human soldier's chest, her cheeks flushed faintly. She struggled to sit up, but her body was still too weak. "Don't move too much," he said calmly, pressing a ration pack into her hands. "You need strength." She looked at the food, then at him, her pride battling with her hunger. After a long pause, she took it, eating slowly, her eyes never leaving his. Silence stretched between them until she finally spoke, her voice low. "You should have left me." The human raised an eyebrow. "And yet, I didn't," he said simply. Her throat tightened, and she looked away, ashamed of the tremble in her voice. "My people, they abandoned me. I was too small, too weak. They said I would only slow them down." He leaned forward, his gaze steady. "Then they were blind. You stood against an army when no one else did. That's not weakness." Her lips trembled, but she hid it with a sharp breath. "You talk as if you know me," she muttered. The human gave a small smile. "I know enough to see you don't deserve to be left behind." Her chest ached at his words. She wasn't sure if it was pain or something else, something she had never felt before. She whispered almost too softly, "Why risk your life for me?" The human looked at her seriously, his voice firm, "Because any should fight alone, not even you." The girl's eyes widened slightly. Her people had always believed strength came from solitude, but now, sitting in the dark with this strange human, she began to wonder if they had been wrong all along. Suddenly, a sound echoed from outside, metal scraping against stone, boots crunching in the dirt. The human's head snapped toward the entrance. He raised his rifle slowly, his finger ready on the trigger. The girl's breath caught in her throat. Enemy scouts had returned, searching the ruins more carefully this time. The human moved silently to the entrance, peering through the crack. Two armored soldiers walked by, their voices low and distorted through helmets. The girl forced herself to crawl closer. Despite her weakness, her hand brushed his arm as she whispered, "If they find us, you should run." The human looked back at her, frowning. "And leave you?" "Not happening." Her chest tightened again, her pride clashing with the strange comfort in his words. The scouts paused right outside, their shadows falling across the bunker's floor. The girl's heart pounded so loudly she was sure they would hear it. Her trembling hand clung to the human's sleeve without her realizing. The soldiers shifted, their visors glowing faintly in the smoke. One of them turned toward the entrance. The human raised his weapon slowly, but before the scout could enter, a distant explosion shook the ground. The soldiers turned sharply and ran toward the sound, leaving the bunker untouched. The girl exhaled shakily, her grip on the human's sleeve loosening. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, she whispered, her voice breaking, "They will keep searching, they won't stop until we're both dead." The human's gaze hardened. "Then we'll stay one step ahead." He looked at her more softly then, adding, "And we'll stay alive together." Her heart skipped at the last word, together. It was such a small word, yet it echoed in her chest like thunder. For years, she had fought alone, unwanted, abandoned. Now, sitting beside this stubborn human in the dark, she felt something different, something terrifying but strangely warm. The bunker grew quiet again. The human leaned back against the wall, his hand resting on his rifle. The alien girl shifted closer, her body trembling from exhaustion and fear. At first, she hesitated, then slowly leaned against him, her head rested on his shoulder, her voice barely above a whisper, "Just until I get my strength back." The human didn't move, didn't push her away. Instead, he adjusted slightly so she could rest more comfortably. His calm voice reached her ear, "Rest, I'll keep watch. Her eyes grew heavy. For the first time in years, she felt safe enough to close them. Her pride told her to resist, but her body betrayed her. Slowly, she drifted into sleep, her breathing evening out. The human sat still, his eyes never leaving the entrance. Outside, enemies still searched, danger still loomed, but inside the bunker, a fragile trust had been born, and in that silent moment, two enemies found themselves bound by something stronger than war. The bunker's silence did not last long. Far away, the echo of armored boots and the growl of machines grew louder. The enemy scouts had not given up, they were hunting carefully, step by step, closer to the ruins where the human and alien girl hid. The human sat against the wall, his rifle balanced in his hands, his ears sharp to every sound. Beside him, the girl stirred awake, her body still weak but her eyes sharper now. She whispered, her voice low, "They are closing in." He nodded without looking at her, his jaw tight. "They want survivors. They won't stop until they find us." Her throat tightened, memories flashing in her mind, times when she was hunted before, abandoned by her clan, forced to face enemies alone. But this time was different. This time she was not alone. Still, fear pressed heavy on her chest. The human shifted, checking his ammo. Not much left. Only a handful of rounds. If they were discovered, it would not be enough. He glanced at her broken blade lying near her feet. "Can you still fight?" he asked quietly. The girl's lips pressed together, shame flickering in her eyes. "I can try," she whispered. He gave a small nod. "Then we'll make them regret hunting us." The word surprised her. He spoke as if they were equals, as if her weakness did not matter. Her heart beat faster, though she tried to hide it. "Why do you keep saying we?" she asked softly. The human looked at her, his gaze steady. "Because you're not alone anymore." Those simple words struck her deeper than any weapon ever had. Before she could reply, the bunker's walls vibrated with heavy steps. Shadows passed across the narrow crack of the entrance. The girl's breathing quickened, her fingers trembling as she reached for her blade. The human put a steady hand over hers, grounding her. "Not yet," he whispered. The soldiers outside spoke in their strange tongue, metallic voices echoing. One of them stepped closer to the entrance, scanning the ruins with a glowing visor. The girl's pulse raced, every instinct screaming to strike first, but she forced herself to trust the human's calm control. Then it happened. The scout bent down, his visor shining into the crack of the bunker wall. His hand reached for the door. The girl's grip tightened on the human's sleeve, her eyes wide with fear. The human raised his rifle slowly, ready to shoot, but before the soldier could enter, a loud screech of metal tore through the ruins. Collapsed beam gave way outside, crashing down with a thunderous sound. The soldiers turned sharply, rushing toward the noise. Their footsteps thundered away from the bunker. For now, the two were safe. The alien girl let out a shaky breath. She didn't kn. Ow. She had been holding, her hand still clung to his sleeve, her body pressed close in fear. When she realized, her cheeks burned, and she pulled away quickly, muttering, "I wasn't afraid." The human gave her a faint smile. "Of course not," he said softly, though his eyes said otherwise. The silence stretched for a moment before he added, "They'll search again, more carefully next time. If we wait here, we'll be trapped." The girl frowned, her weakness weighing heavily on her. "Then what do we do?" The human's eyes sharpened. "A plan forming. We stop running, we turn the hunt back on them." Her eyes widened. He was suggesting they go after the hunters instead. Her instincts screamed it was madness, yet something inside her stirred at his confidence. He wasn't afraid. He was ready. For the first time in her life, she wondered if courage could be contagious. As night fell, the two slipped out of the bunker. Moving through shadows of ruined walls, the human led carefully, every step silent. The girl followed, her blade clutched tight, her breathing uneven but her will stronger than before. The hunters were near, their lights glowing faintly in the smoke, searching every corner. But this time, they were not the only predators in the dark. The human motioned for her to stay low, then tossed a shard of metal across the rubble. It clanged loudly, drawing two soldiers away from their group. The girl's eyes widened as she realized his tactic. She had fought alone for so long, she never thought about tricking the enemy. She only charged head-on. Now she saw a different kind of battle, one built on cleverness and patience. When the two soldiers separated, the human struck fast. A silent burst of fire dropped one instantly. The girl leapt forward, her blade slashing through the second before he could cry out. Her chest heaved, her hands trembling, but she had done it. When she turned, She saw the human giving her a quick nod of approval. That nod meant more to her than victory itself. One by one, they picked off the scouts, turning fear into advantage. The hunt. RS who thought they were the predators suddenly became prey. The girl's exhaustion faded beneath adrenaline. Every strike, every movement beside the human, made her feel alive again. Not just alive, important, as if her presence truly mattered. By the time the last scout fell, silence blanketed the ruins. The girl dropped to her knees, panting hard. Her body was weak, but her spirit blazed. She looked at the human, her lips trembling as she whispered, We did it." He crouched beside her, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. "You did it," he corrected gently. Her eyes widened, her chest tightening at the pride in his tone, but the moment was cut short. In the distance, the heavy sound of larger engines rumbled. More forces were on their way. This time, not scouts, but an entire squadron. The girl's heart sank. They had hunted the hunters, but the real danger was still coming. The human's gaze hardened, his hand tightening on his weapon. "Then we keep moving," he said. She swallowed hard, but this time, instead of despair, she felt something else, a strange trust, because no matter how many enemies came, she knew she would not face them alone. The night was heavy with smoke and ash. The ruins glowed faintly from burning wreckage, and the sound of engines rumbled in the distance like thunder. The human and the alien girl crouched behind a shattered wall, their bodies tired but their eyes sharp. They had hunted the scouts, but now the real army was coming. Not dozens, hundreds. The girl gripped her cracked blade tightly, her hands trembling, her whole body ached, every breath like fire in her chest. She whispered, "We can't fight them all." Her voice shook, though she tried to sound firm. The human looked at her, his expression calm but determined. "No," he said, "but we can fight enough to make it count." His tone was steady, as if he was not afraid of death. Some thing about it made her heart beat faster. She wanted to argue, to tell him they had no chance, but deep inside, she didn't want to waste her last breaths in fear. If this was the end, she wanted to face it with him, not alone. The engines grew louder, dust rising in the distance. Armored soldiers marched in rows, their glowing visors cutting through the smoke. Massive machines rolled behind them, their guns ready. The alien girl's throat tightened, her pride warring with her despair. For a moment, she thought of her clan, those who left her behind, who called her weak. Would they even know she fought here tonight? Would they even care? Her chest ached, but then she looked at the human. He checked his rifle with steady hands, his body battered but unshaken. He had no clan here, no army, no orders, and yet he had stayed. For her. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "Why do you keep fighting?" He looked at her, his eyes steady. "Because if we give up, they win," he said softly, "and because I promised you, you're not alone." The word struck her like lightning. Her breath caught, and she turned her face quickly, hiding the heat that burned in her cheeks. She hated how weak she felt, but she also hated how much she needed to hear those words. The first wave of soldiers entered the ruins, their heavy boots shaking the ground. The human crouched lower, signaling her to stay close. She nodded, her cracked blade ready. Her legs trembled, but her will was strong. Together, they leapt from cover, striking fast. The human's rifle blazed, cutting down enemies in bursts of light. The girl darted beside him, her blade flashing, striking through gaps in armor. Her body screamed with exhaustion, but each time she faltered, his hand steadied her. Each time he stumbled, her blade cut down the one who threatened him. They fought like one body, one rhythm, one will. The enemies were relentless. For every one that fell, two more took its place. The ground shook with explosions, the air burned with fire. But they did not retreat. Step by step, wound by wound, they held their ground. At one point, a massive soldier swung a heavy weapon toward the girl. She gasped, too slow to block. The human shoved her aside, taking the strike across his shoulder. He staggered, blood dripping, but he kept fighting. Her heart lurched, panic flooding her chest. "No," she screamed, striking down the soldier with a furious cry. Her hands shook as she turned to him. You can't keep doing this." But he only smiled faintly. "I told you, I'll protect you." Her eyes burned, but not from smoke. Tears threatened to fall, though she forced them back. She didn't want him to see her weakness, yet deep inside, she realized, it wasn't weakness, it was fear of losing him. The battle raged on, their bodies grew heavier, their movements slower. Still, they refused to fall. The girl pushed herself beyond every limit, her arms numb, her vision blurred, but whenever she thought she couldn't go on, she heard his voice, left side, I've got you. Stay low. Don't give up. And she kept moving, kept fighting. At last, the ruins echoed with silence again. The first wave lay broken at their feet. The girl collapsed onto her knees, gasping for air, her blade slipping from her hand. The human dropped beside her, blood running down his arm, his chest heaving. They were both shaking, both covered in wounds, but they were still alive. She looked at him, her lips parting. You're insane, she whispered weakly. He gave a tired laugh, his eyes soft despite the pain. Maybe, he said. But we're still here. Her chest ached at his words. She wanted to say something. Thank you, stay with me, don't leave. But before she could, the ground shook violently. From the smoke, new shapes emerged, larger than before. A second wave of soldiers, this time with machines rolling beside them. The girl's heart dropped. They had survived one storm, only to face another. She looked at the human, panic in her eyes, but he only tightened his grip on his weapon, forcing himself to his feet. His voice was steady, though his body trembled. Then we fight again. Her hands clenched, her pride and fear mixing with something else, something stronger. She forced herself up, standing beside him despite her shaking legs. She raised her blade, her voice trembling but clear. Then we fight, together. The human's eyes met hers, and in that silent moment, something unspoken passed between them. Not just survival, not just battle, but a bond forged in fire and blood. The enemy roared, the machines thundered forward, side by side. Human and alien girl faced the storm, and as they charged together into the fire, the ruins trembled with the sound of their last stand. The battlefield shook like the earth itself wanted to break. Flames rose high, machines roared, and enemies closed in from every side. The human and the alien girl stood back to back, their bodies trembling, their weapons ready. They had nothing left to give, yet still, they refused to fall. The second wave stormed the ruins, armored soldiers and heavy machines towering over them. The girl gritted her teeth, forcing her weak legs to move. Her cracked blade gleamed faintly in the firelight. The human, bleeding from his shoulder, tightened his grip on his rifle. Together, they charged into the storm. The battle was chaos. Bullets tore through smoke, steel clashed against steel, explosions lit the night. The girl fought like a flame that refused to die. Every time her arms faltered, she remembered his words, "You're not alone anymore." And with every strike, she grew stronger. The human fought beside her, his every move protecting her, shielding her. His voice shouted through the fire, "On your left." Her blade swung, cutting down an enemy, "Behind you." His rifle blazed, clearing her path. They were no longer just fighting, they were surviving as one. But no matter how many enemies they cut down, more repla said them. The human's ammo ran dry, his last bullet echoing into the smoke. He threw the empty weapon aside, gripping a broken spear he ripped from an enemy. The girl's blade finally shattered, the metal snapping in her hands. She gasped, staring at the broken hilt. For a heartbeat, despair surged. Then she looked at him, bleeding, staggering, but still standing, and her chest burned with fierce determination. She would not let him fall. The soldiers closed in, their weapons raised. The girl screamed, throwing herself forward with the broken blade. The human roared beside her, swinging the spear with all his strength. Side by side, they clashed with the enemy until the ruins shook with fire and cries. And then, light split the sky. A blinding flare cut through the smoke, followed by the thunder of aircraft. The girl stumbled, staring upward in shock. Ships descended, not enemy, but her own clan's army. Reinforcements had finally arrived. The hunters froze, their formation breaking as the sky rained fire upon them. Machines exploded, soldiers scattered. The human pulled the girl into cover, shielding her from the shock wave of the bombardment. When the dust settled, the enemy was gone, retreating into the night. Silence fell over the ruins, only the crackle of fire and the sound of approaching footsteps remained. The girl's clan soldiers marched through the smoke, their banners high, their armor shining. They stopped in shock at the sight before them, their abandoned, unwanted warrior, standing alive, with a human at her side. The girl swayed on her feet, her body trembling, but she stood tall, her chin raised, her eyes defiant. One of her clan leaders stepped forward, his voice sharp, "You survived?" With him, he spat, pointing at the human. Gasps spread through the ranks, whispers of anger and disbelief. The girl's heart pounded, but she didn't step back. Her voice was steady as she spoke. Yes, with him, when you left me to die. He stayed, when you called me weak. He fought beside me, when I was alone. He gave me strength. The clan murmured, their faces filled with shame and confusion. The leader sneered. He is human. He is the enemy. You dare defend him. The girl's eyes burned with fierce light. He is not my enemy. He is the reason I still breathe, and if you call him my enemy, then you are blind. Her voice echoed over the ruins, silencing the soldiers. The human stood quietly at her side, his expression unreadable. He had expected her to walk away, to return to her people, but her words told a different story. The leader's face darkened, but he said nothing. Finally, he turned away, signaling the soldiers to withdraw. One by one, they lowered their weapons and stepped back. The girl's chest rose and fell heavily, her pride trembling. She had defied them. For him, the human looked at her, his voice low. You didn't have to do that. She turned to him, her lips trembling but her eyes clear. Yes, I did, she whispered, because you fought for me when no one else would, and I can't let you go. Her small hand reached out, gripping his firmly. For the first time, she didn't hide her fear. For the first time, she admitted her truth. He stared at her, silent for a long moment. Then he squeezed her hand, a faint smile breaking through the blood and dirt on his face. You're not alone anymore, he repeated softly. Her heart skipped, her throat tightening as tears finally fell. And neither are you, she whispered back. The battlefield was still burning, the night still heavy with smoke, but in the middle of ruins, something new had been born. Not just survival, not just alliance, but a bond forged in fire, in trust, in sacrifice. And as dawn began to break over the horizon, the human and the alien girl stood side by side, bruised, bloodied, but unbroken. Not enemies, not strangers, but something greater, a new beginning.